Time has expired, Senator McDonald. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. This morning I'm very pleased to rise to oppose this bill introduced into this place by Senator Colbeck. It will come as little surprise to the chamber to know that I am a passionate supporter of marine parks, and I think that the action that this nation is taking to protect our big blue backyard is actually long overdue. So I'm not in favour of further delay and blockage to what has already been a very robust and, I think, good quality process. We know that the waters surrounding Australia are unique and wonderful. From the Great Barrier Reef to the migratory passages of turtles and whales in my own West Australian state along our west coast, we have wonderful environmental assets that should be protected. And as I have remarked before in this place, and I know that the minister has also said, many of the features in our oceans, if they were on land, they would have been protected decades ago. I have been pleased with the outcome of this process, and I think Australia is likely to be one of the few countries to achieve the international commitment made at Rio+10 in 2002 to develop a representative system of marine parks by 2012. It truly is a wonderful and remarkable milestone. Indeed, our network of marine reserves will be the largest in the world, covering more than a third of Commonwealth waters. I know for some they would have liked to have seen even greater protections for some areas. And, you know, we've all got opinions about these things, and there are some areas that I also would have liked to have seen receive greater protection. There have been, for example, arguments that we should have had greater protections over the Diamantina fracture zone in Western Australia and no-take zones that are closer to the coast. I'd really like to acknowledge everyone that has put in so much effort into what has been a robust and in-depth process, and one that does not need to be compromised or duplicated or overlaid by the process that is in the bill before us. I'd like to thank those in the environment movement, in the fishing industry, and also recreational fishers for their involvement and engagement around these issues. You know, I've received more than 15,000 emails in favour of marine parks from Western Australian constituents alone. It is because of this high level of engagement that we will have the opportunity to be, as a nation, a world leader in marine protection. It has been a very robust process involving all stakeholders, with much higher levels of engagement than under the Howard government's planning process when they undertook a similar marine planning process under these very same laws. And that is, I think, because of the comprehensive nature of our consultation process. I think on that basis that we should be far more confident of the outcome of the marine plan that's before us and its legitimacy than overlaying it with unnecessary duplication that this half-baked process before the Senate today gives us. However, it is precisely this robust consultation process that those opposite are attacking through the bill that is before us today. At the heart of this bill is an implication that the consultation process creating this network of marine parks has been flawed. There is an implication that the consultation process was not rigorous enough, that it did not take proper account of the science, or that it has failed to consider the views of communities and industry. This is simply not the case. We have run a consultation process that has been lengthy. It has been accessible to all members of the community, and indeed it has been responsive to feedback. There's been considerable change to the plans that have been put forward and a lot of negotiation and exchange that has gone on. The consultation process has been largely based on the very same process created by the Howard government during the implementation of its marine reforms. I would add, though, that we have been far more intensive and engaged, both with the science but also with stakeholders. It should not be a disallowable instrument before this parliament because, I think the people, the stakeholders, environmentalists, fishing communities, the fishing industry, recreational fishers, the wider community, the process and the law should be the arbiters of these questions, not the parliament. In our first term of government, Labor took the Howard government model and I think has made it far more comprehensive. We reformed the model to have additional multiple rounds of public information campaigns and consultation, conducted from far back as 2009 to this year. That is more than 3 years of consistent consultation. 3 years of consultation with stakeholders that the coalition is now attempting to throw out the window with this bill that's before us today. So to demonstrate just how comprehensive our consultation process has been, I'd like to take you through some of the elements of it. And I'm going to reflect in particular detail on some of the steps that have been taken in my home state of Western Australia. So there are 2 marine regions that cover the coast of WA, one that comes round from South Australia and up the coast as far as Geraldton through the Commonwealth waters, and then the other one kind of north of Geraldton around the top of the state through into the Northern Territory. There have been extensive consultations in both of these regions. They've been exemplary and they have led to real outcomes for both the environment and for industry. So our southwest region includes some amazing environmental features like the Perth Canyon, the waters around Geograph Bay. They are both of them important nesting grounds and resting grounds for migrating humpback whales. And this region has been very thoroughly consulted. The government engaged stakeholders for further assessments as early as May 2009 in the southwest region. Following the 90-day consultation in 2011, the representatives of the commercial fishing industry of the southwest region were invited to 2 comprehensive workshops, one in October of 2011 and one in February of this year. And this was about going through the options for finalising the marine network reserves. These workshops were very well attended, with about, I think, 35 representatives at each, and it has been a very thorough process. So in the southwest region since 2009, there have been no less than 59 consultation meetings, including 2 multi-sector sessions, 10 public information sessions and 47 targeted stakeholder meetings. And this has all been, that's the formal government consultation that has taken place. But there have been also hundreds of community meetings on both sides of this debate, on all sides of this debate. So there have been very, very high levels of community engagement. In this instance, the meetings we're talking about, they stretched from Esperance all the way up to Geraldton. In the northwest, there were 62 meetings in total, 2 multi-sector sessions, 6 public information sessions and 54 targeted stakeholder meetings. Again, those meetings took place in towns all around the coast, from the north coast, from Kalbarri up to Kununurra and in Wyndham. No affected coastal community in WA was denied the opportunity to participate in this consultation process. 245 meetings held by the department between May 2011 and February 2012, with 98 of these meetings taking place in Western Australia, the most by far, closely followed by Queensland with 67 meetings. Why did the consultations focus so heavily on these states? Well, I can tell you why. It's because these are the states that hadn't yet had the comprehensive marine planning take place in them. So South Australia and Victoria and New South Wales, those Commonwealth areas were largely done under the Howard government. So this is why we've had such high levels of engagement in these states. And I think the outcomes from our process had been manifestly better than those delivered under the previous consultations for the other zones. Under these consultation processes, the government received feedback from a full range of stakeholders, including the scientific community, commercial fishers, oil and gas companies, tourism operators, wreck fishers, Indigenous communities, environmental groups and members of the public. As I said, the entire process has taken more than 3 years, with proposals refined on the basis of stakeholder and public input. Information produced also through thorough socio-economic evaluations. Precisely the kinds of things that the bill before us is asking for. You know, they've already been done. And the bill before us has a much narrower scope and focus for exactly the kind of work that has already taken place and been thoroughly done. The process has taken more than 3 years. Just think about that. I'd also like to comment on what I think has been exceptional leadership from Minister Burke in this area. He has been incredibly thorough and a responsive administrator. On a number of environmental decisions, including this one, I've witnessed his willingness to meet with and listen to all concerned parties. I know that through the consultations on the creation of marine parks, the Minister has ensured that everyone, even with a passing interest, has had several opportunities to comment on the plans. And the proof of that is in the changes that have been made to draft plans, and these changes are evidence that the government has listened and we have acted on community advice. In the Southwest Bioregional Plan, parts of the Marine National Park Zone on the continental shelf in the proposed Eastern Reserve were shifted to reduce impacts on the Esperance rock lobster fishery. So that's just one example of the kind of exchange and consultations that have taken place. In the Northwest Plan, we know that there were changes to the 80 Mile Beach Reserve that significantly decreased the impact of the Western Australian Nickel Bay prawn fishery of the marine reserves. So we know that the Northwest Reserve network has significantly reduced the potential impacts on a number of fisheries from the network proposal taken out for public consultation in August 2011. Overall, the potential impact of the reserve network has been halved from 0.2 for all fisheries down to the region of 0.1%. These are minimal impacts on those fisheries. Really quite small. And, you know, there have certainly been those that have argued that we should not have made those compromises and that, in fact, we should have maintained the boundaries as they were or been even more ambitious, which just goes to show, I think, how the kind of level of engagement that you need around these issues, and that what the coalition has before us today seeks to throw all of that away, to throw it all out, throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I'd like to comment on the concerns of recreational fishers. 96% of the ocean is within 100 kilometres of the shore, under this scheme, remains open to recreational fishers. So we can see that the Commonwealth, I think, has had a very thorough consultation process, and one, I would argue, has been world's best practice, very much so. But what has the Coalition's response to all of this been? Well, the bill before us today that we are debating tells us exactly that. The bill before us today has provisions that would require the government to establish a so-called independent scientific reference panel, as well as a stakeholder advisory group that would go through yet another process of assessment before marine protected areas could be declared. Now, you know, I really think the Coalition is trying to have its cake and eat it too, because, you know, ultimately I think they don't want to look like they're overtly opposed to these marine parks. So they've put forward this delay model that would have massive duplication in it. But their heart's not in it. They simply don't want to support the marine parks that are before us. I think the Coalition believes that the government has deliberately ignored feedback from industry despite all evidence to the contrary. The Coalition's answer to this charge is this baseless bill that's before us today. It is a bill that would essentially require the government to do more consultation with 2 advisory groups. Now, the 2 advisory groups that are put forward in this bill, they are more exclusive than the consultations that have already taken place, more exclusive. They are also less accessible to the public than the consultations that have already taken place, and less transparent than the process the government has pursued over the last few years. This bill is their answer of fudging their way through what they think they have in a political problem. This bill has been brought into this place in the final hour when marine plans are just months away from being finalised and following years and years of consultation. This bill essentially requires us to rip up all of that work, those detailed submissions, and go back to the drawing board. It's a bill which is entirely, I think, about the Liberals looking for a headline. So I'd like to comment, I think, on the impact of the Coalition's plan. It's been a great deal of dithering. The Coalition want us to believe that their process, this proposal, won't have any negative impact. But they are completely silent on the costs of this bill. The costs are, I think, greater than you could at first imagine. There are the obvious ones of establishing new bodies and resourcing them appropriately. And then there is also the question around the types of consultation processes that they would have to go through. They're essentially asking for us to redo what has been a thorough 3-year process that we have just been through, seeking to add these costs to the budget all over again. But in addition to these costs, there are significant opportunity costs. The tourism industry, the fishing industry, the diving industry, they're already gearing up around the plan that is before us. But this bill is designed to create material delay, perhaps I would argue even permanent delay, in the implementation of marine parks. Every day that we unnecessarily delay is another day in which our precious and unique marine biodiversity is being pushed closer to the brink. Every day we unnecessarily delay in which our fisheries are being inadequately cared for. Every day that we delay is unnecessarily a delay that we do a disservice to the legacy that we want to leave the children of our nation. Those delays could also cost our economy millions and detrimentally affect our environmental assets in ways that we can avoid. And we can avoid by acting now and continuing on the good path that we have already established. By acting now and rejecting this bill, we can also end that uncertainty for industry, because what the Coalition has put before us doesn't assist industry, it simply puts yet another layer of bureaucracy over the current decision-making process. Throughout our consultation process, the government has had strong communication with stakeholders so that they know where they stand. Under the Coalition's bill, industry and local communities have no idea. They cannot know the outcome of the processes that they will be any better for them, nor can they be confident that their voices will be heard in what is a much more closed and exclusive model of consultation. Overall, I think it's clear that we cannot afford to support this bill. It is not in the interests of the environment or industry. It is being driven by a small, vocal minority who don't support marine parks, nor the science behind them. That is not the legacy that I want this place to leave for the next generation. They deserve much better, as does our wonderful and beautiful marine ecosystems of our nation.
Thank you, Senator Pratt.